Greetings, friends! Today we find ourselves tangled up in Sony's twisted world of Madam Web. That's right, you know, the most beloved hero out there in the whole Spider-Verse. Come on, you don't know? Well, good, because even the folks at Sony, they don't really know either. I'd bet $100 right now that they didn't do any research before they looked into this comic book character. I mean, they didn't know what kind of reception it was going to get from the normies or anything beyond the words female-centric, because that's a great reason to make a movie, right? I mean, this flaming web fire just happens along because, well, Sony saw Disney putting out the Marvels and thought, hey, we need a piece of that girl power goodness, because that's all it takes to succeed, right? Well, that's what the Wonder Kid weblings over at Sony thought anyway. So they pressed forward, and now we're looking at a Morbius-sized disaster and perhaps even worse. So slap on those web slingers, folks, because, well, 50 Shades of Madam Web is about to come to screens near you. I don't think anybody's going to see it. But here we go! Now, I know what you're all thinking. Marvel lovers out there always knew that Spider-Man was the most popular Marvel comic book character. Certainly anything with the name Spider-Man attached to it would do rather well. I mean, at least that's what Sony thought. They went out and they even hired Andrew Garfield, and he was all set to suit up for a right proper appearance in this film before that idea got scuttled. So I guess they'll use him elsewhere. I don't know where, but this was one of the ways that I would say that they went out and they claimed defeat before even one frame of film was shot. So here we are. And we have a Madam Web solo adventure movie on the big screen because everybody was clamoring for it, right? Well, in the typical Marvel bait and switch style, of course, we aren't getting a solo adventure at all. No, this is going to include the Spiderettes. Yay. Okay, they aren't actually called the Spiderettes. I don't think so. Grant? And if you are getting the little hairs on the back of your neck standing up on end and visions of birds of prey in your mind, well, you aren't the only one. So this not solo film is about to make some very lonely numbers and quite possibly could be historically the lowest performer for Sony, Marvel, and the whole of the MCU. And yes, this is properly referred to as an MCU movie. Thanks, Gary. Now, Sony's universe strategy has always been questionable. They've been somewhat ambitious, to be fair, but they're creating kind of a shared cinematic universe around Spider-Man characters, and that was kind of a stroke of genius. And then it seems that Sony just went out and had a stroke. But because when you have Spider-Verse stuff, you want Spider-Man to actually appear to be the focal point, right? I mean, Sony woke up at the hospital after they had said stroke, and then they remembered everything that they wanted to do except for Spider-Man. Well, it seems like that moment of amnesia actually has some consequences. And of course, Madam Web's low projected performance raises some questions about Sony's decision to focus on lesser-known characters right from the start. Could the lack of name recognition and fan excitement be the downfall of Madam Web primarily? Or the menagerie of also-ran other secondary characters that come along with her? Well, yeah, all of that. But let's back up a bit because this is important. So we're going to rewind to the very beginning, where the business roundtable that I've been referring to recently in several videos, you know, the one that declared that corporations should champion societal values, right? Or at least their vision of society. You know, the one that's reminiscent of the feudal times. And incidentally, I'm curious, do you think you'll like being referred to as a serf or pleb? Personally, I'm not very fond of either of those, but to each their own. Anyway, to stay in lockstep with right think, of course, Sony took, well, all of that advice and aimed to champion these lesser-known characters rather than, you know, pursue profits. And then they're also hoping to eventually connect them all, but the flaw in this approach becomes apparent since Madam Web is struggling to capture any audience enthusiasm because nobody knows who it is, let alone there's absolutely no recognition at all. Just some vague suggestion that it has to do with Spider-Man. Should Sony have started with more familiar characters like, let's say, Black Cat or Kraken the Hunter? Or, you know, introduce all of these characters slowly through some like Spider-Man movies, like you normally do, especially when you're introducing these new villains that become bigger and bigger over time. That seems like a solid strategy, like something Marvel has done before, at least, before Phase 4. So, will somebody just, make me a movie executive, please? Because I promise I can make more money than any of these guys. Jeez. Anyway, moving to the inevitable and predictable, the pathetic, catastrophic box office forecast, which I'm sure you'll all agree is, not going to be great. In fact, Box Office Pro's projections paint a mighty grim picture of Madame Web's debut, with a predicted $25 to $35 million domestic launch, and a total domestic gross of somewhere between 56 and 101 million. Those are very dismal numbers. And it's clear that audiences might not be swinging into theaters for this Spider-Man spinoff, so to speak. Now, this could be the beginning of Sony's crash and burn with superhero misadventures of the woke kind, at least, that most recent one. And in fact, all of their future offerings seem to line up now, like DC's Fail to Oblivion, Disney's Marvel failures, and now Morbius, the Madam and the Ladies of the Evening, and the upcoming Kraven, who we will get into in just a minute, because that's worth talking about. Sufferin' succotash, Sony. I'm glad that you kept this budget scaled to your talent on the film. Otherwise, this could have been really, really bad. But why put your focus here other than the girl power goodness in the genre dominated predominantly by a male audience? Was it really just to thwart the patriarchy? Is it just the message? Listen, an argument could be made for characters like Black Cat, Silver Sable, and Kraken the Hunter, who have a rich comic history with Spider-Man. To get first dibs on a solo film, that would have made a little more sense, but they would still have had to put Spider-Man in the background to succeed, or maybe at the forefront, because focusing on them first could have built a stronger foundation for Sony's connected saga in a different timeline. But no, instead, the rush to spotlight Madame Web, a relatively unknown character, is shaping up to be a colossal failure commercially. Worse yet, if all the recent publicity is to be believed, and I'm going to take the director's word for it, this is in a entirely separate timeline. In fact, it's not just outside of the timeline, it's in its own universe, basically. Oh boy. Do you think there's any chance that Sony will reconsider its strategy for the future Spider-Man spinoffs? I would. My prediction, if it wasn't already clear, is a lot of broken hearts on Valentine's Day. Well, coincidentally, Madame Web swings into theaters on February 14th of 2024, which will likely only lead to more heartache. Yet, the question remains, can a character less familiar outside the core fan base carry a standalone Marvel film? All evidence previously would suggest no. With early marketing memes out there, tons of them, by the way, and potential box office disappointment looming, Sony's Spider-Man spin-off universe faces probably the most challenging foe of all: the message. So, ask yourself, will Madame Web's struggles become a cautionary tale for Sony, and other studios, signaling a need for reevaluation of their approach? Or will it serve as a wake-up call, finally, for an entire industry on the verge of failure? Because if it doesn't, they're in some really big trouble. Let me know your thoughts and webtastic opinions down in the comments section below. And give me your numbers on Madame Web's box office predictions and, Sony's Spider-Man Universe strategy overall, because I think they don't get it. Yeah. Oh, and don't forget to swing by that like button down there. And, if you're not subscribed, hey, help me get to 20K, please. I would truly appreciate it. Stick around for more Marvel mayhem coming up here in the next few weeks, because there will be plenty of it. And as always, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya!